Everyone, we're recording. Thanks for joining me tonight. I appreciate you. I've said this now a few times already. I'm going to say it one final time, and I apologize for those that are listening. We planned on having guest speakers come on and talk about remote jobs. Unfortunately, some health issues came up, so we're not able to do that tonight, but we still want to provide you with a lot of value. We want to talk about remote clinical jobs. We want to talk about how to find them. We're going to talk about how to negotiate for them, some quick tips there. And then we want to talk about, just at the very end, about what it's like to work with us at the Happy PharmD and about how we help people find and get into those jobs. So I wanted to ask you guys, why are you looking for a remote job? Emily, hoping to learn how to maximize being virtual. Oh, so do you mean like efficiency and how to be more effective? Curious. Morgan, she wants it for a long commute, more time with family. Wendy, flexibility, kids and expenses. Interesting. Some would say that if you have kids, having a remote job actually is a bad thing. Depends on how well behaved your kids are, but we'll talk about that. More flexibility, freedom to live anywhere in the world. Absolutely. Jen, young kids, flexibility, convenience, flexibility, freedom to live, flexibility, seeing a lot of that. Very cool. Long commute. Ooh, physical health problems due to standing. Yeah, that is unfortunately quite common in pharmacy if you've been standing for a long time. Something more exciting. So I've seen a lot of flexibility. For those of you that want to live in other places, where would you want to live? I'm curious to hear about that. And my final question for the night is, what questions do you guys have about remote jobs? I want to make sure that we answer at least some of those tonight. Samantha, anywhere that's not overpopulated. Okay. So that's outside of LA, right? California. And you'll have to forgive me. I am going to be letting people in to the room as well. So I'm going to be a little bit distracted as we go through this. Okay, where can we find those jobs? How to find a job? How other companies structure their work from home to compare and contrast and see if there are components I can suggest to my employer. Ooh, interesting, Emily. I feel like this is a very detailed conversation. I don't know if everyone will get a ton of benefit from it, but Emily, I would definitely welcome a conversation. Feel free to message me, alex@thehappypharmd.com. Happy to go back and forth about it. Florida or Texas, best way to find a job, how to search for them, how do we search for jobs? Okay, I'm seeing a lot of the same thing, how to search, how to find these things. Okay, so let's jump into it. Remote. So what's going on the inside at the Happy PharmD is that I'm working on a lot of big projects. We're doing a lot of research about career satisfaction, and we're doing also a lot of research on the different career paths that are out there. I've got a book coming out. It's called Potential. It's all about potential career pathways that you can choose as a pharmacist. Really excited for that. We've identified over 50 different paths that are unique. However, in all of them, you won't find the words remote in any one of those paths. That's really important, I think, to probably start this conversation out, because some people, they just want a remote job. And getting a remote job potentially is one of the easier transitions to make, rather than doing something like a complete career change from hospital to AmCare. A remote job is just a feature. So really quickly, the way to find a remote job is really to start with companies that are doing virtual things. That's like the 5-minute win from this. What are virtual things? What are virtual work? Well, it's anything that doesn't require a pharmacist to be on site. If you think about the on-site activities that a pharmacist does, it's things like compounding, dispensing, because a pharmacist can do education over the phone. A pharmacist can do script fulfillment virtually. A pharmacist can do process improvement, operations. Pharmacists can do practically all of the tasks that they can do from their home, except maybe patient assessment, which very few career paths have. So to answer the question, potentially any career path and any job type can have virtual components to it. So if you want to think about the lever to pull, is it my search that will give me a virtual job? It's not really the search. It's actually negotiation. So in terms of what is available to you out there, if you're thinking about clinical work in particular, it's what we were going to be talking about tonight, save the health issue, is your ability to negotiate. And I'll start by telling my awful experience and what I learned from it, and potentially a resource if you guys would like it later. When I got my first job offer, I was a resident. I was managing a pharmacy at the time, and I got the call, and they said, "We want to offer you a job." Okay, great. And they said the salary, and I was like, "Oh, how much money?" And she repeated it, and I was like, "Sure, yeah, absolutely, I'll take it." From what we've learned from working with over 700 pharmacists is that most pharmacists feel like because of the job market right now, they can't negotiate. Does anyone else feel that way? That you don't have any standing right now to negotiate for what you want? Yes, yeah, BSR depends on the position. Yeah, you're right. Absolutely depends on the position. I can't even find a job, so it's better than nothing. Yeah, Samantha, that's a tough reality that a lot of people sit through. So the first step to identifying remote is identifying, number one, a good company, good standing, good reputation. What we have found in helping clients look for jobs is that if a company has a bad reputation, they are less likely to negotiate with you. So when we think of bad reputation, I think we all know what comes to mind. I'm not going to say it because I'm being recorded, but you know what I'm thinking of. The larger the institution, the less likely as well that they are willing to be flexible with you. Not always true, but I can speak from experience that at the VA, that they are less flexible in negotiations, especially in the beginning. But for benefits like from working from home, what it really takes is having that right connection. Because I knew certain people, I was able to turn my 5-day work week into 4 10-hour shifts, which was fantastic. That made my life so much better. Healthcare systems won't be negotiable. Not always true, BSR, but in some cases, yeah, I could see where you're coming from. Sabine, I would be willing to work for less considering position is virtual. Side tangent, I personally, I agree with you. It's not something I love talking about because I know a lot of people are very much tied to how much they make and their salary because their expenses go up to their salary. But if you're miserable and you found a great job working at a great company with lots of potential, and it was a $10,000 to $15,000 pay cut, I know a lot of people that wouldn't take it, which is very sad. Because what happens in particularly a lot of these positions is that there's room for improvement. There's raises, there's bonuses, there's potential to improve. And the more responsibility they take you on, the more likely you're to make money later. But the immediate pain of losing that amount of money, sometimes for people, it's worth the pain. It's worth the pain of where they're at, or just waiting for another opportunity to come along. So when it comes to negotiation, it sounds like everyone here is kind of feeling like they don't have room or space to really negotiate for these kinds of things. Has anyone tried to negotiate in their current job? I'm just curious. Have you tried to renegotiate your current position? Okay, got one yes. Thanks, Samneen. Absolutely not. They would not be amused. Nope. Sort of. System won't allow remote. Okay, getting a lot of, this isn't going to work for my current position. Okay. Union contract. Ooh, David, I feel your pain. I feel your pain because at the Veteran Affairs, which is a decent company to work for, lots of benefits, they also had a union that prohibited me from doing quite a few things that I wanted to do. They would probably hire someone for the same or less. Retail not negotiating with anything about anybody. Yeah, they hold all the cards, don't they, right now? Remote not welcome in current role. Okay, so we're getting a lot of clear messages from people that remote isn't happening at their current job. Okay, so let's talk about the two things that we can do to identify remote jobs online. So of course, what you can do is type in remote pharmacist position, into Google. And I'm actually going to show you a few positions that I found just by looking on one of our partner websites. We'll take a look at that. But I kind of want to talk about the big picture approach as to what you can do to find those roles. So what you can do starting tonight, immediately after this call, is basically take one of the first steps that we do for all of our clients, which is research. A core pillar of having an indispensable career where jobs are being presented to you rather than you going to look for them is to have a really good awareness of the field that you want to get into. So one of the things that can be done, no matter what state you're in, no matter where you're at in the world, whether you want to live in Spain, Portugal, like I do one day, is you can go online and you can type in virtual healthcare companies. And this will take you down an extremely long research path. I just typed in virtual healthcare companies into Google, and we've got 200 million results. Okay, we got enough research for you to do for a lifetime. So what are you actually doing when you research these things? Well, you're researching the companies. You're finding out what trends they are doing, what jobs they have typically open. And ideally, you're trying to narrow down company options rather than job options. One of the problems that's very clear that's happening in pharmacy is that there's too much competition. So one of my favorite sayings from a virtual teacher of mine is that when everyone is zigging, you need to zag. When everyone is doing one thing, i.e. only looking for openings at companies, you should do the opposite. We survey managers regularly on LinkedIn. And in my most recent survey I did about how many applications do you typically get, the vast majority of managers reported getting anywhere from 50 to 100 applications per opening. So even just taking the best circumstances, less than, let's say it's 50 applications, that's a 2% chance for being selected in an interview, just statistically, okay? That is not a good, I wouldn't play that game. I wouldn't bet. If like just thinking out loud here about gambling, if you had a 2% chance to win something, would you throw your money into it? Anyone? Oh, if the payout's really big. Not hearing anything in the chat. That's okay. So the approach that I'm recommending everyone take, and it's the approach that is working for the pharmacists we work with, is to first identify the companies that are out there, the companies that are growing in both pharmacy and in healthcare, the ones that are providing virtual healthcare services. By finding companies, you are reversing the script. Everyone right now is focused on where's the opportunity, where's the opening. But what research actually clearly shows us about job positions and openings is that the vast majority of jobs are filled. About 50% of jobs are filled even before the job is posted. And so if jobs are being fulfilled before they're posted, your chances again of being asked for an interview are even lower. What we're recommending everyone do is instead think about what are the companies that are out there that have problems that you can solve as a pharmacist. So if you're thinking about becoming a clinician for a remote job and you want to provide medical care, if you're thinking about wanting to write content, you could write for WebMD. If you're thinking about providing medication consultations, you really enjoy working with patients and educating them. There are a lot of specialty pharmacies that have virtual jobs and virtual work. There are PBMs out there where you're able to do prior auths from home. There are pharma jobs out there where they provide virtual work, medical communications companies. This may not seem revolutionary, but I'm surprised over and over again that when people are searching for a job, the majority of the work that they think is related to the job hunt is focused on themselves. It's focused on applying to a job, about selling themselves and competing with everyone else who's also trying to sell themselves and put in, resume after resume to companies. We have found that approach isn't as successful as one that is more focused on these companies. So what do? Let's think about these telemed companies. So we've got a list here, the 10 best online companies. So what you could do I would more so go after what most interests you. But I would look at these things that they do. I'd look at their website, I'd bring it up. I would look at, is this company actually doing anything interesting that I care about? If you take the approach of, I just want any job, it's going to be very hard to sell yourself. So is this company making a difference in things that I care about? Mental health. Let's assume I'm looking for a job. I'd love to provide mental health consultations. Great. Look, they're providing mental health. So on here, I can look at how does this all work? I can look at their onboarding system. I can see how it looks like from a patient perspective. And the next thing that I would do is I would start building my relationship with this company. This is taking way too long. It's probably because I'm hosting. And I'd reach out to this company. I would find out, honestly, I would look at careers first. And I'd see what jobs they have open, even though this is where most people go. Okay, they have a list here. But if they're not looking for a pharmacist, that's absolutely fine. I can work around that. Because what do pharmacists do? Medication specialist. That's what we are. We know it better than anyone else. And that's our selling point for these companies. Because you can almost guarantee that what they're focused on is the thing that makes money, that generates revenue by billing, right? Treatment, diagnosis, and treatment. But what they may not have is they may not have a specialist. And who knows, this company may be too new. Or I'm sorry, it may be too established. So what I would do is I would go back to my Google search and I would type in, top 10 promising startups in healthcare. I would start doing research about pharmacy startups and to see what kind of services they're providing. One of my acquaintances, Sam Enderig, has a company all about providing like a virtual network for independent pharmacies to work with practitioners. He's a startup. I know he's hiring people. So it's, again, it may not seem like a big switch, but it's subtle and powerful to focus on companies' needs and demands versus your own demand of finding a new job. Because it's through that, you're able to start conversations. You're able to begin to learn knowledge about the industry and what they are specifically looking for. And that can help you tailor your application, your cover letter, your resume to be a better selling point for when they do have a job. And as we stated before, like over 50% of jobs are filled before the job is posted, because most people like to hire people that they know and trust. We also know from research, this is career development research, by the way, it's really boring. If you want to read it, you can check it out, but it'll put you to sleep. The idea is that jobs are more likely to be fulfilled from second degree networks. So the people you know is your first degree network. The people that they know that you don't know is your second degree network. You can see this kind of thing on LinkedIn very commonly, where you see that people are like second degree or third degree connections. That means you're only separated, from them second degree by one person. That is where the majority of people find their opportunities, not their first degree network. Another little tidbit for you. Okay. So just to recap for those of you that joined really quick, the best thing that you can do to try to find a remote job is to look for companies that provide remote virtual services, and to begin to research them and begin to develop relationships with their managers, their executives, the people on their team that are willing to talk with you, ideally within your second or first degree networks, and then tailor your application to those needs and demands so that you can apply to the job either when it's opening or when they find out if they have an opening. But here is what everyone wants. Everyone wants to know, where are the jobs? How do you find them? So I wanted to provide really quickly a resource that has like 20 jobs on it right now that I know a lot of people are not reviewing or looking at because we're strategic partners with them. And that's Job RX. Let me share my screen. Let me know if you can't see it. So Job RX, it's basically a giant job board that has like 15,000 pharmacist jobs on here. And I just typed in remote. This first job here is an ad, but you can see here that these jobs are clinical jobs, specialist jobs, analyst jobs, some farm tech jobs. There's not a lot here, but the key thing is that when you can look at these jobs, you can find out the unique things about them. Just by looking at one job, you can pull all sorts of information. The first one here, Spanish speaking. So if you can speak a language, this is actually really, really valuable. In fact, we've helped a few people get international jobs based on their language ability. Yes, it does pay less, and you need to know that. In fact, many remote jobs will often pay less than in person because of that added benefit. But if you're able to speak another language, this actually opens up your career field to a significant degree if you're willing to deal with the lower salary. Bar none, no one is paid more on average than Americans, American pharmacists. But if you're like, I could be paid $60,000, live super happy, work from Portugal if I want to, because that's the best place to retire in the world in the moment, according to quite a few sources. and I can do my job. I can work when I want to, and I love the work that you do. That's fantastic. That is awesome. And you should take that opportunity. But there's one thing. Here's another thing. I talk about this a lot. People don't believe me though. When people say work experience is preferred, don't let this get you down. Don't let this discourage you from applying. You are a pharmacist. You have a doctorate. If you are a BS Pharm, you have the equivalent of a doctorate. You are a professional. You are able to learn all of these things because guess what? When you had your first job, you probably were not that good, right? You probably were mediocre at best, but you learned and you practiced and you got better and you improved over time. The same is true for these kinds of jobs. This is simply to weed out the chaff, I suppose, to weed out the people that aren't willing to put in the effort. So JobRx does have a few other jobs. You can go through Google, typing remote clinical pharmacist jobs, and you're going to see a bunch of things, Indeed, Glassdoor. But remember what I said at the beginning, when everyone is zigging, you need to zag. When everyone's applying to these jobs, because you can bet remote jobs are getting a lot more applications than non, because it's the same thing that what you want. Flexibility, the ability to do what you want, when you want. And it all comes down to one final thing that I want to end on, and that's negotiation. Negotiation. If you are if you receive a job, you get a job offer, you go through the interview process, you spend all this time and energy, and they are giving you the offer. This is when you can start to negotiate. Because we don't have hard data on this, but we have not had one person that we have worked with one-on-one who has told us that after they started negotiations with a company, that they rescinded their offer because they were asking for too much. It's never happened once. So when you are being offered a job, they want you. They want you to work for them. They don't want other people. They've maybe interviewed 30 people, 20 people, 15. They've reviewed 50 plus applications, if not way more. They want you, and they want it to be something that works for you. So when you can think about, okay, this is your moment, this is the time to negotiate. There are some hard rules, and this is something that I recommend you do during the research phase. You should know the company's policy on these sort of things before even applying. But here's the moment to start negotiating for virtual. And the beauty of the virtual aspect is that it's one of those things that once their foothold is lost, once they give virtual work, they can only go downhill. Very rarely can they rescind, they can bring people back by demand. I mean, they can. That's when legal lawsuits start getting involved. That's when people's contracts start getting torn apart by lawyers. Companies are scared to do that. I'm scared to do that. I wouldn't want to do that for my company. I wouldn't want to make everyone move up here to Michigan, but I wouldn't do that anyway. But when you're negotiating, they are giving you an offer. And that is when you want to take a moment to pause, to reflect, and then to begin to negotiate for whatever that thing is. If it's salary, if it's some sort of benefit, if it's a compensation package, or, and probably what brings most people here, if it's remote. This is the time to do it. It's not after you accept the offer. It is right when you are told, we want to offer you the job, and here's this much. And so here is a tactic that a lot of people have used that have helped people to successfully get some sort of virtual role, or I should say feature, a part of their job. Because remember, a remote job isn't a career path. It's just an aspect of a job. So when someone says, we want to offer you a job, it's $150,000. How does that sound? whatever they say to you. The best tactic in the world in negotiation is one that I've learned from quite a few experts. My friend Kwame Christian, who runs the American Negotiation Institute, told me, you say 150,000. And just let silence sit. Who here is comfortable with doing something like that? Anyone? Anyone brave enough? Samantha? Yeah, you did that. Congratulations. Kristen, all the time, did it for my job. Hey, Jolene, good. Awesome. We got some practitioners. If you don't feel bold or if you didn't reply, I'd encourage you to practice. Practice on your partner, practice on your girlfriend, boyfriend, your mother, your dad. It's a great skill to have. If salary is the most important thing to you, then hone in on that. But if getting the remote aspects down, then you kind of play the win-lose situation. And that goes like this. 150,000, based on my research, what I actually think I should be paid is 160. And that's based on XYZ factor. But I would be willing to forego the average, what other people are paid, if I'm given flexibility. Kristen, you can also just pause and say you need to talk about it with your partner. Yeah, it's another good tactic. Yeah, I figured talk. You need to tall though. I don't know. That's funny. So in those moments, I guess in a way you negotiate, right? You are phrasing it in such a way where you feel like you're giving up something that is deserved in exchange for something that frankly you find way more valuable. If I was back in the job market, I'd probably only go for an academic job. And I would absolutely say, I expect virtual. I will only be on campus by 2 days a week. That'd be the very most. That'd be the very most. Can you repeat what you said initially? I can try. I'm not very good at repeating myself, at least in the same way that I did it. So let's say same scenario, 150,000, 150,000. Based on my research, which is assuming I've done my research, I believe that the average for this position is about this, 160,000. But I would be willing to forego that in exchange for flexibility and having remote work. Of course, one of the key points in all of this is assuming a lot. This is why these, sometimes teaching on these things isn't as valuable. It's assuming things like the company values your satisfaction. We know for a fact many don't. There are those that are out there. It's assuming that they believe in the future of work. It's very clear from statistical trends that work from home is becoming more and more common. And we know that companies are going in that direction. We also know that work satisfaction increases when working remote. That's good and bad. Because what we're doing tonight actually is we're not really talking about the bad side of remote. It's all sexy. It's all fun, right? But there are some things that you have to consider. Like work is always with you. You can't, if you don't create powerful boundaries, which is actually, I think I saw Laura here. Laura is one of our Happy Farm D coaches. Oh, it looks like she popped off. Anyways, her and I have talked a lot about this because she works virtually in her role, that when you don't have powerful boundaries with your employer, work seeps in. Oh, hey, it's 6:30. I just got this email. I really need to address it. No. Dang it. No. you need to respect your life, your family, your kids, if you got them. You need to say no. It's 7:30 right now, my time, and I got my wife's permission to do this. I said, babe, I'm wanting to do a webinar. I want to talk with some people about remote work, and I want to help some people. Is it okay? Yeah, of course. Okay, great. Yeah. But we've talked about these things beforehand. But one of the common complaints that does happen, particularly with pharmacists who already have a remote job, is that there are unclear expectations set by their manager, which is why it's so important in the interview process, way before you apply to a job, that you not only establish those boundaries with your family, with yourself, and with your potential employer. What is expected of me is such an important question to ask, because if it's not clearly communicated, then your boss, your manager, they will find a way to get the most out of you. I watched my father work his butt off because his boss expected him to work like a dog. And there are bosses out there like that. So, buyer beware with remote work. There are things that you need to consider. You need to be very critical of jobs. The grass is not always greener, my friends. In fact, Chris Bakley, who's one of our Happy PharmD coaches, works in a specialty pharmacy. He and I were actually just texting because we had this emergency tonight. We were talking back and forth about his work because he went virtual due to COVID. And he said that it could be potentially permanent if he negotiated the right way. But he also said that he likes it. He likes being in person, excuse me. He doesn't like being alone. He's not a huge fan of it. And he also said, it creeps in. He likes when he's home, to be present. And he finds that when he works from home, it's very easy for work and family to intermingle, and that mixture isn't comfortable for him. Where, as for myself, I'm an entrepreneur. I work from home all the time. I love it. It's a great mix and balance for me. So one thing to consider for yourself is, how is my family going to be impacted by this decision? Michelle, remote jobs scare me a little. A lot of the ones that I see pay you per case instead of a salary. Let's talk about that. In fact, we saw that in the job that I showed. Spanish-speaking clinical pharmacist, MTM. I'm already skeptical. It's certainly something you need to be very wary of. I find this really hard to talk about because everyone's situation is so different. Some people are getting paid $80,000 a year as a pharmacist. And they're like, you know what, if I'm only paid $70,000 to do, occasional work per case, who cares? I'm miserable. I want to get into something more engaging. I want to do something where I feel like I'm making a difference. For them, absolutely, makes total sense. For those pharmacists that are, grandfathered into the old salary, the pharmacists that are like making $130,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year, and they're like, I've had enough, but they have allowed their lifestyle to match what they make, to go into something where they are making only $80,000 a year is like, I just can't make that jump. So Michelle, if it's a concern for you, you need to have a real conversation with the person. In fact, this is a great way for you to start your application process with the company. So let's say we apply to this job that we looked at earlier, Spanish-speaking clinical pharmacist, MTM remote. It's with Navitus. Not sure if I'm saying that right. Health Solutions. So what I would do, if that was a concern of mine as well, is I'm only going to get paid per case. Call the company up. find out the pharmacists that are there. Reach out, ask if, just ask, can I ask some questions about this job? I have questions before I apply. You're much more likely to be remembered for when they are reviewing the applications if you just call to ask questions about the job before you apply. It shows a level of professionalism as well as just you saying, hey, I don't want to work at any place. I don't want to work at just anything that's going to make me feel better. I'm going to work at a company that ideally I feel better and I enjoy the work. And I'd ask the tough questions. What is the typical caseload of a pharmacist? Would you have stats? What operations are you tracking? Because you better believe if they're any kind of valid operation that they're tracking the amount of cases. And here, this is a little bit of a comment, but here is one of the major problems with doing like consultant work, patient consultant work specifically, is that it's not consistent. We have actually helped quite a few people leave companies. I won't name names, but companies where they hire pharmacists as consultants to do these kinds of jobs where potentially they could work from home, mainly because the workload is not consistent. They show people, oh, here's how you could make a ton of money. Here's exactly what you need to do in order to make $120,000 a year as a consultant for us. But based on their current employers, they aren't able to do that. Or if they are able to, it's because they're working way more than everyone else. They're working ungodly hours, or they're honestly just on it all the time and they don't give up. They're driven, which is great. Those people, they succeed in those roles, but it's not for everyone. Emily, I guess that's where it's important to search for credible companies who care about their employees, but hard to find the balance. That's why this process is so relational. Hate to say it, but the majority of people who are asked to interviews is because of network referrals, because of recommendations. The main reason why people want to talk to others is because of who they know, what they know. And one reason why so many people are struggling right now finding a job is because they're bankrupt in their community or in their relationships. And it's kind of why we started what we do. We want to create that community. We want to help other people. And, it's by putting pharmacists in great jobs that they in turn want to hire other people who get it, other people who want to show up to work, who want to be engaged, who want to be fulfilled, who want that satisfaction. Yes, they know life isn't perfect and life goes on, but ultimately it's about finding that role and making it fit. Tonight was not what I expected. Tonight, I expected to talk with a pharmacist, talk about her clinical role, talk about how she got into it. And we are going to do that next week. You're on that list. Don't worry, you'll be notified when we do it. But we love for you to start that journey now. If you haven't talked with us yet, love to have that conversation. And in fact, anyone who I think takes this next step with us, regardless of whether or not you'd want to work with us, we'd be happy to send you our negotiation book. It's an amazing tool. It's helped a lot of people earn a few extra $1,000 per year. We don't charge anything for it at the moment because we don't give it away. We only give it to our clients. But it's not a sexy name. It's just called Pharmacist Salary and Benefit Negotiation Guide. And it's a very long document that walks you through step by step by step how to negotiate your position when you're being offered that job, and also how to position yourself for that flexibility. Would that book be helpful? Would you guys like that? Cool. If you haven't talked with myself, I don't do too many calls anymore because I'm working on bigger projects. But if you haven't, we would love to chat with you about your career, about helping you get into a remote clinical job, or really just a job that matches you. And we take a very critical approach to that, to making sure that whatever that next company is, it's the ideal next step in your indispensable career, where you're ideally enjoying the work that you do. It's work that you care about. It's work that the world needs, and you can be paid to do it. And we do that through career coaching, which is a process involved with you and another pharmacist. We have 10 pharmacist coaches who work from everywhere from pharma to medical communications to emergency preparedness for the government, specialty pharmacy, clinical pharmacy, hospital pharmacy. We're all over the place. And that coach works with you to build a strategy to transition you into your next career. And we would love to chat with you. We'd love to talk to you through that process. For anyone that, I'll put a link in the chat here. It's a long link. Forgive the ugliness of the link. I won't repeat it because it'll be just a bunch of gibberish. But if you click the link, you answer a few questions, and you book a time to talk with our career growth advisor, Eric. Love to absolutely just help you transition into that career. You know, it's our goal. For the last few years now, our goal has been to help 300 pharmacists each year get into a new career. And this year, we're actually a little bit behind, but we're getting very close to that. We're almost at our max load for working with our coaches. So far this year, we've worked with, wow. No, is my math right? Yeah, 90 people, which is amazing. And we're almost halfway through the year. But we would absolutely love to work with you as well to help you transition. And for anyone who fills out the application, happy to send you my salary negotiation guide. It's a doozy of a book. It's about 50 pages, but it's very step-by-step approach. And it's very methodical about how to position yourself for a better salary. And if at the very least it gets you another $1,000 a month, like woo woo, like, you know, that's awesome. You know, buy some airplane tickets for you and your spouse, go on a hot date, spend the weekend away. On me. On me. I appreciate you guys sticking with me tonight. Thank you for hanging out with me, talking about remote jobs. I'll answer a few questions. Again, next week, we'll be having someone actually talk about the remote job, what they do on a day-to-day basis, and how they got into it. More on that later. I apologize, but health, you know, got to take care of ourselves first, and health issues came up. Emily, going to Portugal. Yeah. Oh my gosh, Emily, prices right now are so good. So good. And I'm holding myself back. I actually have a family health issue as well that's holding me back from going anywhere. Really sad about it because I just saw the other day Portugal was like $400 and I'm like, oh, I want to go so bad. I also want to go to Costa Rica. It's not in the works. Okay. Just a couple questions and then I'm gonna end tonight's call. Brittany, what are your thoughts on working remotely for a company as needed and see how well you fit while maintaining your full-time primary job? Absolutely. Absolutely. If you can handle it, if your family's okay with it, I'd go for it, especially if they're offering it to you now. In fact, that's one of the easiest ways to transition, you know, helping out as needed, because then you're getting the inside look. How do they treat their employees? What do they really value? Do they really just care about the bottom dollar? It is an excellent, excellent way to learn everything you can about the company and really figure out how to get yourself involved. And if you have the right strategy, Brittany, what you can do is really position yourself as the solution to the problems that they have. Because think about your current job. you probably know all of the problems that you have to face with, right? You know the struggles, you know what managers care about. You get newsletters and emails about priorities and companies' objectives and all that. Well, what better way to be like a secret operative agent working for them while at the same time, trying to figure out how to sell yourself as the solution to the problems that they have. Absolutely. One of the problems though will be is the demands, because what you'll find is that a certain point will happen when, hopefully they'll be asking more from you than what you can give, whether it be time, commitment, or maybe some other expectation. And that's when you kind of have to decide, am I ready to join or am I not ready yet? And sometimes that can hold people back. That's a hard that's a hard commitment. Just have to find that opportunity now. Yeah. I'd assume that Spanish speaking job we looked at earlier is probably part-time, though it could be wrong. But yes. Get curious, Brittany. Look for something out there. Look for virtual work that you would find enjoyable. Jeffrey, I think it's important to also acknowledge variable state license requirements for remote jobs. It's important, but in the same light, like most managers know you're probably capable of getting a license. Unless you have some sort of legal issue with your license, which is totally, it is a problem that some people have. In those cases, I actually recommend not going the clinical route if that is the case. But the only time that people really care about that license is when the job's an immediate need, which again, as we pointed out, don't compete with everyone else. Don't look on job boards. You can look there. That's fine. You can start there. But I would encourage people to instead look for companies that are doing interesting things. That's the kind of work that you want to be involved with. Pretty. Best virtual jobs in best site for virtual jobs in Canada. Pretty. I actually don't know. To give you context, Pretty, I hope I'm saying your name right. I'm assuming I'm not. I apologize. But there's 330,000 pharmacists in the United States. There's like 30,000 pharmacists in Canada. We have helped a few Canadian pharmacists, but in every case that I can think of, every client that we've worked with, not one of them found a job through a job board. So without researching it, I probably couldn't give you a good answer. If there is a place to start, I would recommend your province association. I know some of them don't have the best reputations, but there's always good networking going on in associations. Mayor, I believe some states do restrict remote verification. Very true. Some do. So obviously in your search, you need to be somewhat aware of it, but I'm more of like, figure it out. Figure it out later. Some people have gotten creative with this. Some people have figured out how to change their address to other places. Some people have figured out just getting a transfer of license and then moving residence. I'm more of a fan of doing things by the book legally, but it's certainly possible. Emily, my company is limiting based more on taxes. My company is based in New Hampshire. No state income taxes. Yeah, woohoo. That is awesome. And when I asked to move back to California, they said they cannot due to California state taxes. Can I call BS on that? Not you. Not your story, Emily, but them. Yes, I can. Okay. Yeah, that I dig. Emily, if you haven't already, I dig. I'd find out. What are the taxes? What does that actually look like? What does that mean practically? Um, if necessary, talk to a lawyer. Um, Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with talking to a tax advisor as well. Um, in fact, like one of the things that I would do is I'd talk to my lawyer, find out who they know that does business in California, and then talk with them, and then I'd find out what are companies paying. Like it's not too hard to figure that out if that is the case. And then I would try to get creative. I try to get creative if people are willing. One of the problems that people do run into in this whole negotiation for remote work is that they think that their managers are really inflexible, but there's a lot of pressure right now in HR. I don't talk about this enough, but we talk with HR representatives, we talk with managers a lot because we want their feedback on our program, because obviously our candidates work with, them to get those jobs, right? So right now, companies are under a huge amount of pressure because of the Great Resignation. If you haven't heard about this, basically everyone's up in arms because of company or employee loyalty at an all-time low. I'm sure everyone's heard the crazy stories about, stores like McDonald's offering bonuses to kids in high school. In fact, I know a kid, he got a bonus for signing up to work at McDonald's. Like, it's a crazy time we live in. And pharmacy, I would say, is slightly affected by this. Healthcare is certainly affected by this. And well-being has never been more in front of companies right now. It's very clear that healthcare across the board has an extremely high burnout rate. Anywhere, depending on who you survey and when, it's anywhere between 10 to 30% higher than the average population. To give you context, according to one study done by Gallup, they surveyed like 2,000 US adults. 40% were burned out. And that's fairly consistent across different industries. In healthcare, specifically in pharmacy, it varies between 50 and 75% show signs of burnout. In the last 5 years, we looked at 20 studies in burnout, and that's pretty consistent. It ranged about 65% show signs of burnout. So what are they thinking? From their perspective, when they do get good people, and they are seeing now how hard it is to keep good people, is they're realizing the cost of employee turnover, which is very high. It's very high. If you think about the cost to hire you as a pharmacist, if the average is $120,000, it approximately costs a company around $200,000 to hire you, to train you, and if they lose you, that's money gone. They can't make it back. So companies are realizing that they have to give more and more, particularly those outside of retail chain. And the pendulum will swing, everyone. The job market is going to change. It's going to take some time to get there. And that's sad to think about. But things will eventually get back to a new normal. It's just not 2005 anymore. It's no longer 6 figures in a car. It is, you're lucky to have a job. Sabrina, thanks for having me. Thanks for being with us. Thanks everyone for listening to me yammer about remote jobs. Wanted to share pros and cons of getting into remote work. Wanted to talk about negotiations because a lot of people don't even think about that when they're looking for a job. And talking about just the application process. My hope is that you are excited to do something different. And it's my future hope that we're able to help you in this process. We're able to help you transition into something that you really love, because it's not only going to affect you, but it's going to affect your family. It's going to affect your community and ultimately the profession. And that's something that I'm excited about. Even when I'm sad and I'm depressed or I'm down on myself, I get to think about the impact we're making, which is honestly, it's my life's joy. So again, happy to chat with you. If you want to fill out our survey, oops, I just sent it to one person. Pretty, whoops. It's because you guys are sending me direct messages. I'm sorry. I'll put it in the chat one final time. If you fill out the survey, talk with us. We'd love to see if we could help you. We're not meant for everyone, and that is perfectly fine. If we were to help every pharmacist leave their job, we would soon have a lot of unhappy people because we don't have enough pharmacists on staff. But we do have a few spots open the remainder of this month. And if you fill out the survey, talk with our growth advisor, Eric, and he'll just have a conversation with you. Find out if you're in a good position for us to work with you to build a strategy for your next career transition. And of course, send you that book, No Questions Asked, about salary and negotiation guide. Thank you again, everyone, for being here. Excited really to just continue to spread the message of, hey, there are good jobs out there. You need to be careful. You need to take care of yourself and your career. Thank you again, everyone, for listening to me, and have a great night. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate your kind words. Thank you. Good night.